All right, Letty, we are now live.
Good afternoon, members. We have Thomas Engdahl, who's running late, and Zachary Cusho, I have not heard, and we have two members out. One will be joining us remotely, but before that, I will go ahead and take roll call. And I will start with the attendance and Member Adams. Here. Member Dilworth.
Here.
Member Engdahl is not present. Member Erickson will join us shortly. Member Cusho is not present. Member McCubbin, excuse me if I don't pronounce it correctly, McCubbin. Member McKay is absent. Member Naker?
It's Nachor. I'm
Nachor.
here. Yeah, Nachor. Yep.
Sorry.
Got it.
And member Sheehan Mayer.
Present. You just have to say Sheehan, it's fine.
Sheehan, okay. Great. Now we will be having a member joining us remotely. Is Miss Erickson on remote?
They have not joined yet.
Well, we did have a request by member Erickson that she's unable to attend in person due to a related disability. And she will be joining us via Zoom. So I need a motion to accept her via Zoom when she's present. Can I get a motion by a member?
So moved.
In a second?
I'll second.
Great. And member Adams?
In favor.
Member Dilworth?
Aye.
Member Engdahl? Member Erickson? She's not present at this time. Member Cusho? Absent. Member McCubbin? Member McKay is absent. Member Nachor?
It's Nachor.
Nachor.
Hi,
I'm gonna do
Nachor.
my accent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry. I'll teach you. Like how to pronounce my final name. Okay.
Great.
No problem.
Member Sheehan?
Aye.
Great, thank you. With that, we could go ahead and move to item number 2, which is anybody from the public that wish to speak.
Check, Mike.
Yes, I could have done that without a mic, actually, but this is nicer. My name is Dwayne, and I first of all want to welcome the new members of the Citizens Oversight Committee. And it's my understanding that you're here not only because of the original ballot initiative, that the law didn't say anything about an oversight committee, but the ballot initiative mentioned that the SMART would have an oversight committee. And the grand jury, of course, suggested that you not only have the oversight committee, but section R2 suggested additional advisory committees. And there seems to be some question about that. And I appreciate if you'd all pay attention to the requirements of the grand jury recommendations and the acceptances by the board. I would point out that in the history of the board, and many of you have probably been following it for many years. Myself, I was at Peter Calthorpe's presentation 30 years ago when he proposed a series of pedestrian-oriented communities along the old rail. And I always thought that this is how this whole idea got started, was we were going to do pedestrian-oriented communities at each city and activate the rail between them so as to minimize their auto needs for transportation throughout the county. Anyway, a number of people would criticize the former board as well as the former Citizens Oversight Committee, that they allowed us to appoint the wrong manager a man with no railroad experience, that they had the wrong plan, that they chose to implement the 1970s BART park and ride system rather than where BART has gone in as early as the 1990s to building maximum housing around the stations so as to maximize ridership. Some people would complain that bought the wrong cars, and therefore have to have these very high platforms for this. And I mentioned the park and ride. The station at Hamilton was millions of dollars spent, but if you ride past there, you almost see no cars. It appears we didn't have any opinion as to what kind of parking lot we needed at Hamilton. And again, they're building in Petaluma without expertise as to what kind of parking lots they need in Petaluma. Then the other people would complain that they purchased the rail without the correct expert overseas, either the Citizens Oversight Committee looking at the contract to purchase the freight line, or looking at the amount being spent to buy an asset that shortly thereafter was depleted by a major segment of its income. So what kind of PE ratio we paid for that business and then immediately depleted that needed certainly some citizens oversight, if not some legal oversight. Now, myself, as I'd mentioned, I'm mainly interested in the pedestrian-oriented communities. And we're here very close to where Petaluma set aside 90 acres to build a nice pedestrian-oriented community in their urban growth boundary expansion area. But there's been no discussion of that, no investigation of that. And in fact, when the grand jury suggested we have more hearings, the one place that was not talked about hearings, we had a number of cities, we had hearings, and a number of subjects, they had hearings. They did not have a hearing on the Corona station or in Petaluma at all, did not have a hearing on the Citizens Oversight Committee. It seems that we could have committee hearings on most every other city and subject. I would suggest that I mentioned earlier that additional committees would be advised. It would have been nice if we'd had a rail advisory committee when they went to purchase the rail. There are people, retirees, people who have vast railroad experience here that could have advised them as to what could have been done best. The trail people, the bike people, would very much have appreciated a committee on that subject so that they could feel that the choice of which ones to build first had input from people who ride their bikes and walk.
Mr. Bellinger, can we wrap?
Yes, I will then. I guess I covered listening sessions, and they've got the wrong plan going on in Petaluma that the city is pressing, and the Danco is pressing, that is not designed to bring any more ridership there. It's designed for the bottom third of the income. We needed housing for the teachers, firemen, and police officers in Marin. We needed a whole different set and direction of building the one section that we're building. So I guess that's my time allocated, and thank you very much. And I wish you the best of luck in directing the financial decisions being made in the future.
Going to Zoom now, we have one phone call in listener. So phone number ending in 22. I've asked you to unmute and you can go ahead and make your comment.
Hello, my name is Jenny Kerrigan, and I'm calling on behalf of my mother, Cindy Cahy, who lives in San Rafael, right next to the SMART train. And this probably isn't the best way to introduce you to your first committee meeting, but I'm imploring someone for help, and I'm not getting any legitimate response from the SMART or the contractor, Central Pacific Engineering. And I really don't want to have to go to Superior Court and get a restraining order on this project just because no one will listen. Basically, my mother lives right next to the construction project that is an enhancement project. It's not necessary. In fact, 2 years ago, they already did it. And what I'm asking them to do is postpone the project 3 to 6 months because my mother has recently been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness with a terminal prognosis. Her windows have to be open. The demolition that they are going to create and the destruction of noise and the hours that they're suggesting from 6 to 10 p.m., all of which are going to definitely hurt my mother's ability to have to live and create a support system for a life-threatening illness. Now she is goes to rehab 2 times a week. She has all of her people working together, and I am her daughter, and I'm her caregiver, and I'm here every day. And all I was suggesting is that they postpone this part of the project, and I can't get any response whatsoever. And like I said, I don't think, I mean, I'll do it. I will go file a TRO. I did it for PG&E when they were doing the trees illegally, but I don't want to have to go to a court of law and ask for help for something that's simple that should be under some kind of committee review. They didn't notify us until Monday, 2 days ago, for the project to start the following Monday. It's going to start March 27th and end April 10th. Now there are 3 sites. So there are other sites that they could start on and work on, and maybe they could work with a contractor to come back in 3 to 6 months. But to be quite honest, my mother needs this time, and this is where she lives for the past 14 years. And it just seems fair that if her life is in question by the air quality and the destruction of the bioregion, she already lives next to the train and the freeway. And there are other residents that aren't very pleased about this as well, but they're not as desperate as I am. So I'm appealing to the committee. I don't know what I just found you on their website. I don't know what your influence is and your ability to act quickly, but I need someone to reach out to the people in charge of this project and at least sit down and talk to my mother and I about alternatives. Thank you.
At this time, there are no more hands raised for comment on Zoom.
Thank you. We can move to item number 3. So item number 3 would be just presentation of the COC members. And we have a slide that shows all of our members, and you will also have in front of you a binder. That's just an informational binder for you to have. There's materials. They're also located on the website. So I have a list of all the COC members with their correct email address for you. And then the second slide is our staff. You'll have a slide also with our staff members, which we have Eddie Cummings, the general manager. We have Heather McKillop, our chief financial officer, Tom Lyons, which is our district counsel, and me, myself, Leticia Rosas, which is the clerk of the board. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I am the general manager named Eddie Cummins. Really glad to have you guys on board. This is awesome. This is kind of unique because we haven't elected a chair and a vice chair at this point, but we will get to that towards the end of the presentation. But I thought that what we could do is just start by each one of us introducing ourselves. Member Dilworth, would you like to start?
Hello, everybody. My name's Lucy. There it is. Okay. My name's Lucy Dilworth. I represent Marin, and I'm very excited to be here and looking forward to learning a lot. Thank you.
Sherry Adams. I live in Sonoma County. I am a train rider and a path user, and my application was supported by the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, and look forward to learning more and working with you all to get our mission done.
I'm Tom Engdahl from Marin, and I was very involved in the SMART train for a long time, since the beginning of when it was coming in. My daughter's ridden the train up to Santa Rosa every day for 3.5 years until she got her car, and then to go to school. And so I'm very excited about the train, and I'm sorry for being late. I'll try and see if I can get the train up next time.
Danny Sheehan, I live in Sebastopol. I worked with Tom on Measure I, so he's familiar to me, and I look forward to working with all of you. I've been on the campaign since 2008, basically, when they failed in 2006. I said, well, we can't have that. So I've been involved since then.
Zachary Cashel, resident of Marin County, reside in Corte Madera. I'm the founder and managing partner of Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures. We're building a much more robust startup company community for Marin and Sonoma County. Excited to see the train succeed from a personal standpoint, but from a business standpoint, we have a very vested interest and very strong interest in ensuring that there are is a robust business cluster and community along the Smart Train corridor, and to whatever degree I can do or we can do to help make sure that happens. It'll be good for all citizens here in the North Bay. So excited to be here, and thank you.
Sandy McCubbin, I live in Healdsburg, and I'm very excited to see the train coming our way. I have a career as a lobbyist, and I had a number of light and heavy rail clients. So it's an industry I know a lot about.
Hey, my name is Anthony, and I have been a resident of Novato for over 14 years. And I see one of my good friends here, Matt Stevens. We've been in contact for many years. And as a transit rider myself, transit dependent, I'm also part of at least 3 other organizations. 2 of them advocate for better, transportation in the Bay Area. There's also one wherein I'm also part of a citizens oversight committee with Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority. So I definitely can bring in a lot of transit related experiences to the board, and hopefully I can make a huge difference in making transit even more accessible, affordable, and reachable here in the North Bay.
Did I remember show up online?
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right. Very good. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I'm Eddie Cummins. I'm the general manager. I've been with the agency for, I don't know, a little over a year, almost a year and a half at this point. I got here in November of 2021. And so it's been really good. And I will turn it over to our CFO, Heather McKillop.
Thank you. I'm Heather McKillop. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here. I've been here exactly a year longer than Eddie. We came on the same day, 1 year apart. I came here from Denver, where I was the CFO at the Regional Transportation District, which is a transit agency there. And before that, I spent most of my career at the Colorado Department of Transportation as the Chief Financial Officer there. And I spent a little time in Southern California at the Southern California Association Governments, which is the equivalent of an MTC only in Southern California, where I was the CFO there. So, and love living here. So it's great to meet all of you here today.
Hello, my name is Tom Lyons. I am the General Counsel for SMART. I've been here a little over 10 years. So I'm quite familiar with SMART these days. Prior to my arriving at SMART, I used to be a deputy county counsel in Marin County, and I worked there for another 15 years or so. So I'm quite familiar with public entities and their needs.
Great. I'm Letty Rosas. I have been with SMART for 13 years. I have been the clerk of the board for 10 years. So welcome, everybody. If you have any questions, please reach out.
And before I move on to the next slide, just let everybody know that our email addresses and phone numbers are up there. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or require any additional information. So what we wanted to do next is just really kind of an overview. We kind of put together a outline of kind of everything that we needed to cover today. We'll start with the duties associated with the Citizens Oversight Committee. And then we really wanted to dig in and talk about some of the work that we've been doing with the board in regards to our planning for the future. We'll go over the model. We'll cover the smart house that we created. This is a smart house identifies our values, our strategic objectives, our mission, and our vision statements. We'll talk about the listening sessions that we conducted. And then go over some of the associated goals and strategies that have come out of this process. And then at that point, I will turn it over to Heather to talk about the 2019 strategic plan and go over the short range transit plan fiscal year 2022 through 2029 and the fiscal year 22-23 budget. And then we will turn it over to Tom Lyons, who will go over Brown Act information. So with this first part, committee duties, I will just read it because this is straight out of the COC bylaws. Provide input and review the strategic plan and subsequent plans, receive periodic updates on significant financial matters not previously identified in the strategic plan or annual budget that may materially impact the previously adopted strategic plan. Second bullet, hold meetings quarterly and issue reports on at least an annual basis to inform and update the SMART board and the Sonoma-Marin County residents on any developments related to the implementation, planning, and advancements of the strategic plan. Copies of this document should be made widely available to the public. Receive briefings on financial, budgetary, capital plans, and other strategic planning matters that may have a material impact on the district and provide updates to the SMART Board of Directors at least biannually. So jumping into our planning for the future model, I know many of you have probably been associated with strategic planning over the years. There are many models. This is one that I was used to using in the past. And we have started it here. This particular model started with a SWOT analysis of really identifying the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats of the agency. That information was used from the board to really identify what our mission and vision statement was, and then identifying our strategic objectives, meaning those things that were most important to the agency. From there, we established some goals, and now we're at this level now where it's about strategy development, deployment. We'll also want to make sure that we monitor our performance as we move through this, and everything that we do is aimed at achieving our desired results. So this is the SMART house. It identifies our values. That's the foundation of the house. Values are safety, integrity, stewardship, and continuous improvement. The strategic objectives that the board identified were ridership, pathways, extensions, and freight. And the mission statement is we connect communities, and there's some tiny writing underneath that. It's difficult to see, but it says SMART provides safe, reliable, and environmentally responsible transportation options. And then the vision statement was smarter transportation for a smarter future. And it says below that, SMART envisions an innovative transportation system that provides integrated mobility solutions, promotes sustainable growth, and enhances quality of life. So from this point forward, we held a series of listening sessions in 2022 associated with each one of our strategic objectives. Overall, we had 193 people attend these listening sessions. We received 1,004 surveys, and we received 60 email responses. From this, based on the feedback that we received, as well as just staff, digging into what was going on at the agency and figuring out how we could make things better, the goals associated with ridership are as follows. Facilitate bike share at 10 of our 12 stations, implement microtransit pilot program at Airport Station. For those of you not familiar with microtransit, it's essentially like Uber and Lyft. It'll utilize some form of technology. The idea is to close the gap between the Sonoma County, Sonoma Airport Station of SMART and the Sonoma County Airport. The beauty of this particular project, though, is that the vehicle won't just serve just from the station to the airport, but it can do anything in that geographical region. So getting people to work, getting people to the hotels, or even to the airport, it can do any of those things in that area. So it's an on-demand type service. We're really interested in how this works out, because if this works, if this is effective, if this does solve the first and last mile problem at our airport station, this is something that could be duplicated on down the line. We also, something we heard a lot about was late night service. So we are looking at late night service on Friday and Saturday nights. We are looking right now and planning to implement that probably in May. So we're currently in the planning phase of that, but that'll really give people an opportunity to utilize the SMART train to go to dinner on Friday and Saturday nights. We want to work with transit providers to improve bus and ferry connections. We want to model the rail system to determine requirements to maintain a 30-60 headway. That is one of the challenges that we identified with SMART that really influences our connections with local bus. So that is a project we're working on. Want to look for innovative methods to restore our snack bar. That is comments we receive on a regular basis. People did enjoy that snack bar. However, it is challenging, to get a vendor to go in there that can actually make that pencil out for them. Allow overnight parking at our SMART park and ride lots. Again, if you're encouraging people to ride the train and go to the airport, the next question is going to be, why can't we park at the park and rides overnight? So we're working with that and plan to take that to our board at our April meeting. And then we want to closely monitor system and our ridership and adjust as necessary. Something we talk about all the time is that, the world's changed on us a little bit with COVID, right? There's the work from home is a real thing. Things have changed. Travel patterns have changed. We want to make sure as an agency, we remain nimble, agile, and have the ability to adapt to our changing environment. And then we want to implement an aggressive marketing plan to really make sure we're getting the word out, help people understand what SMART can do for them and how they can utilize the system. Moving on to pathways, the feedback that we received from the bicycle community was very clear. Concrete in the ground, right? Concrete in the ground. So it's pretty straightforward with these strategies. Construct the funded segments of the pathway, continue to design and permit the pathways, publish updated pathway maps, and develop and implement a wayfinding program that is currently underway, and we're working on that wayfinding program as we speak. Talking about our extension strategic objective, we broke this into two categories because they're two separate things and we have to look at them differently. There's the east-west extension, and then there's the northern extension. I'll speak first to the east-west extension. We want to continue our participation with the Highway 37 corridor activities. We are a part of that committee now. We have a seat at the table, and we are working through those phases as we speak. We want to work with our partners to incorporate rail into the project. SMART was a little late to the table, to be honest with you. There's already been a lot of work done as far as the highway portion of it goes. We want to make sure that SMART's integrated into that project. We want to complete a Caltrans rail service plan analysis on that area. That project is currently underway. They're looking at things like where double tracking would need to be, potentially where stations would be, travel times, things of that nature. And then we partner with Caltrans in the FRA Corridor ID program through the SMART East-West project development and subsequent phases. The Corridor ID program is relatively new. Caltrans is submitting this segment to the FRA. And if this line is identified in that plan, they would give us a certain amount of money to do project development and planning, and then you get in line for federal funding in the future. So it's a very important step to get identified in the Corridor ID program. Moving on to our northern extensions. Uh-oh, something has happened here.
Looks like we're just having another panelist join, so I'll go ahead and spotlight your video and have it come up.
Thank you. So in regards to the northern extensions, step number one, secure funding to extend the rail line to Healdsburg. I put some puzzle pieces in there. I realized that they're difficult to see. But if you look at this is the way we explained this concept to the board as to what we had going on and what we were doing in regards to our funding strategy. And we used puzzle pieces because the green pieces at the top, those three pieces are valued at $118 million. And those are the pieces that we've already secured. Regional Measure 3 was decided that freed up $40 million. We were successful in the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program for $34 million. And then through other sources of a federal appropriations, state funds, and Measure M in Sonoma County, we were able to come up with $44 million. So that's $118 million towards this project. We have three our grants requests that are out there that we anticipate hearing about real soon. The first one is the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program Round 2. We have a request in, excuse me, for $55 million. The Solutions for Congested Corridor is for $30 million. And then there's the CRISI, which is a federal grant that is valued at $28 million. We anticipate to hear back on the TIRCP grant in April of 23. And the Solutions for Congested Corridor, we anticipate hearing back on that one in June of 23. And CRISI, the slide says June, but we've received intel that they may make an announcement on that particular grant in late May. So we'll see how this goes. But the short story is that if we're able to be successful in all these grants, we'll have all the funding we need to get the train to Healdsburg. Other things we want to do is conduct updated market and ridership analysis, conduct updated freight market analysis. Obviously, as you look to extend this rail line, we also want to make the freight train a part of that. Not only are there potential freight opportunities up north, but also the freight side of the business could help to fund the extensions moving forward. We want to identify and clarify community and system benefits associated with the Cloverdale extension and continue to seek federal and state capital grant funding as we move forward. And then with freight, this was a presentation we just gave to the board last week with the from the freight listening session. Number one, we want to increase our annual revenue by $500,000 a year plus. We want to decrease our expenditures by $100,000. We want to secure capital and state of good repair improvement funding. So requirements right now is about $8.2 million. And then we want to make sure that we market freight and storage opportunities at SMART. For those of you that are not aware, SMART has storage tracks along its alignment that has the potential to bring in somewhere between $250,000 and maybe even $500,000 a year based off storing rail cars or potentially locomotives at that particular site. So there's a real opportunity for us to close that gap. That's something we can do without increasing additional resources, headcount and funding and things of that nature. So that would be an easy win for us. We want to promote our transload opportunities at Victory Station. That's a small site that we have near our Sherrillville yard, and that's an area we want to use in the future. Acquire new business. I think there's a real opportunity for us to expand our service to the existing customers that we have today. And we're currently in discussions with a potential customer that could potentially bring in about $250,000 a year. Not prepared to, excuse me, not prepared to talk about that at this time, but we are working through that process. And then as the line continues to expand towards the north, we have a real opportunity to gain more customers along the alignment. We want to examine freight tariffs and consider increasing fees as we look at ways to close these gaps. And one thing that we can do internally by improving our processes is reduce car hire fees. When we pick something up at the interchange and bring it in, we essentially have 5 days to return that car. So it has to get to the customer, it has to get unloaded and get back to the interchange 5 days. Anything over 5 days, we start paying an hourly rate that costs somewhere between 30 cents and about 75 cents an hour. So this is an area that we really want to tighten up and make sure we have a good solid process in this area. And then we want to manage our maintenance requirements, things such as bridge, tracks, crossing equipment, etc.
May I ask a question before you go on?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to use the same tracks for both passenger and rail?
So yes and no. So so we have our own freight line that only the freight operates on. That's the east-west line. But when it comes down at Novato at the Ignacio Y, it connects to the passenger rail tracks and comes up to Petaluma. So yes, we do utilize the passenger rail tracks after revenue service for freight.
Okay.
And with that, I will turn it over to Heather to talk about the 2019 strategic plan.
Thank you. So I believe the plan is included in your packet. If not, it's online. We're not going to go through the 2019 strategic plan, but it was developed in 2019 and was kind of the foundation for the Measure I campaign. The plan states that the Citizen Oversight Committee established by Smart Board will provide input and review the strategic plan and subsequent updates. And this strategic plan identifies planned investments in capital implementation operations, maintenance for the extension, and the duration of the tax. The strategic plan needs to be updated every 5 years, and our next update is scheduled for September of 2024. So this is a pretty involved process. We've been doing a lot of work over the last couple of years to get ready for this update. A lot has changed since 2019. Eddie just reviewed a lot of the funding requests that we have in, the money that we've received. It has a dramatic impact on the plan and what we've been able to accomplish since 2019, including the implementation of pathways. My expectation is that we'll be starting about this time next year, working with you and the board in developing that update to the strategic plan. But it will pull on a lot of the information that you will have already known about by that time. One will be working with you guys through the budgeting process. We've also developed a capital plan that gets updated each year when we go through the budgeting process. So as we go through that, you'll become more and more familiar. So by the time we actually get to the strategic plan process next spring, you should know most of the background information before you even get there. So it shouldn't be a surprise, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I expect it to take about 6 months because we'll try to run that around the same process that we do with the budget because there's a lot of overlap there. Next slide. The short range transit plan, we did our first short range transit plan in September of 21. This plan is required by MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, in partnership with state and local agencies. And it's required for the Transportation Improvement Plan, which is the TIP, and the Transportation Long Range Plan, which they call the RTP. The planning horizon for this is 10 years, and it's supposed to be updated every 4 years. And then the scope of what goes into that plan is dictated in a lot of detail by MTC. So you can't deviate. They even have what chapter and what has to be in each chapter. So there's not a lot of deviation and a lot of things that you can add or delete from that. This plan for us, we did not do the 10 years in this first go around. We only did through 2029. And that's because our sales tax goes away in 2029, and not knowing what that would look like, we decided that the planning horizon would be 2029. And then we didn't have to make a lot of disclaimers in the document because you have to show what your funding sources are to put projects in that plan. We just got our plan done, and then MTC decided we all needed, all the transit agencies in the Bay Area needed to do an update to the plan due to the changes that were as a result of the pandemic. So as you have all heard, and we've talked a little bit about already, the changes in people going to work, how often they're going to work, what the additional infusion of funding did for the agencies that came from the federal government through all of the COVID funding. And how people use that money, how it affected different agencies differently. All of that they wanted to capture. So we did an update to that plan. We were required to run certain scenarios on that plan. I have to tell you, the scenarios came in much lower than we were ever projecting for revenues. And so we did our own scenario that we felt was more accurate and described the situation that SMART was in. We definitely have a much better revenue source right now than a lot of the Bay Area communities do, especially San Francisco. Our sales tax has been quite robust. A lot of people moved to this area and spent money during the pandemic and have stayed and continue to spend money. So we felt we were in a little different situation. There were a couple other agencies that felt that same way, and we created a fourth scenario that we submitted. The original short range plan as well as the amended and the scenario planning are online also. I'm not sure if they're included in your packet, but if not, they're online. And I'd be glad to answer any questions about that scenario planning that you might have as we move forward. Next. So the fiscal year 23 budget. So I'm not sure if you're all aware, but we work on a fiscal year basis. So we start our year on July 1st and we end it on June 30th. This is a little different than some agencies you might know about, which were on a calendar year. And then we also have to deal with the federal fiscal year. So the federal fiscal year starts on October 1st and ends on September 30th. So that's another important date for us because we get a lot of federal funds and we have to make sure that all of our documentation is prepared for that and meets all the criteria there. So, but for purposes of what we're going to talk about, when we talk about a fiscal year here, it's going to be July 1 to June 30th. So we are right in the process of developing our next fiscal year's budget. The current one that we're in is fiscal year 23. That budget was adopted on June 15th of 2022. It was amended on February 1st. So we do one large amendment each year. We do little ones in between. We can do it at any time with the board. We can go to them and ask for changes, but we do kind of one large one in February of each year. And then based on that, we use that information to get us through the rest of the year. So we shouldn't need to make any other changes. The only area where we're seeing some more actions that we're having to take to the board is in the area of freight. So that has been very unpredictable for us this year. And the reason for that is that we didn't have a lot of information going into freight as to what the finances look like. We got it from a private company who was not required to disclose that information. So it's been kind of a situation where we did the best estimates we could, and we've been having to make adjustments, as well as adjustments as it relates to the capital portion of it, more work that needed to be done that we didn't realize at the time. So, but otherwise, the amended budget that we do in February will be most likely the last one we do before we start the new fiscal year. That budget and the amended ones are available on our SMARTS website. Next slide. So the one that's coming up is fiscal year 24 already. That's currently being developed, and it's really important that you look at those goals and strategies that Eddie described, because that will be the basis for this budget. So it's really, really great that we finally have goals and strategies, because that's the way that you really develop a budget. Because if you don't have funding for something, it is not going to get done, and it's not going to be a focus that the staff has if we don't identify it. And so that is the premise behind using the goals and strategies as our guidance to what we actually fund. We will be having a budget workshop with the board on May 3rd, and we would encourage you to join us if you can. You can join by Zoom. It will also be in person, but Zoom might be easier. It will be at 1:30. So they're kind of normal board time, but we'll be using that as a workshop. The draft budget will be presented shortly thereafter to the board and released to the public around May 17th. And the final budget is scheduled for approval on June 21st. So even though it sounds like a long time, it is a very, very short period of time to get all of this done. One of the things that we're going to talk to you when it comes to your meetings, and in particular as it relates to the budget, is we would like to have a meeting of this group in order to get your feedback sometime between May 17th and June 21st. And it has to be closer to May 17th than June 21st, so I can actually use any feedback in putting together the final budget. So I think we were thinking somewhere along the 31st of May for you to consider, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But I just wanted you to keep that in the mind when we're talking about dates, is being able to lay out a calendar so that you can have meaningful discussion and input into our processes. So, and this is one that we already had in progress. So we're trying to figure out how to make that fit that in, so you have enough time to review what is in that document,
at the same time, give us enough time to complete the document for the board packet to be approved on June 21st. And I think that's my last slide. I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Thank you very much. Now you get my boring presentation. So how many of you are familiar with the Brown Act and the Brown Act rules? Oh, great. So I'm just going to highlight a few things. This presentation will be available for you guys on our website. So I'm just going to skip around.
a little bit.
Oh, thank you. And I'll skip around a little bit, but I just want to give you guys a basis for it. And then you guys can also, access it on the website, and we'll have other materials there for you too. So, so essentially, every time you guys meet, generally speaking, you will be having a sort of a Brown Act meeting, because that's what your what the COC requirements are, is that you guys have a meeting where you make yourself available to the public, and any decision, discussions and so forth should be done through that. The basic topics that this presentation covers is up there in the presentation slide there. But I just want to highlight, sort of what is a meeting, because I get that question a lot. So a meeting basically is any congregation of a majority of you when you're discussing, deliberating, and hearing items that are subject matter to your COC. Even if you're not making any actions or decisions, just the fact that you're deliberating and discussing it is part of the Brown Act requirements that you follow. Couple of exceptions, of course, if you're all meeting for a birthday party or for some sort of other thing that is not related to what your jurisdictional matters are concerned, or if you're attending other public meetings and you have, majority of you, provided that you are vigilant not to socialize and discuss, items that are subject to your jurisdiction. Am I pressing the wrong button? Here we go. As you just recently heard, it's a good practice to start setting up timeframes for when you are going to have a regular meeting. And the bylaws provide for a minimum amount, but it would be good to start, discuss and then determine when those timeframes are, so you can give the notice to the public, and the public will know that they can attend via Zoom or in person. If I don't think this will be something that you will do on a regular basis, but if you set a meeting for, let's say, 9 o'clock on a certain day, and then you decide that you're going to meet, at 8 o'clock, then that will be considered a special meeting, and there's a couple of things that you would have to do ahead of time. So chances are that most likely you will set a time frame for a meeting and a date, and that's where you'll stick to that for the most part. We will be assisting the chair and vice chair in creating an agenda for each of your meetings. So that agenda will have to be created and then posted on our website, on your website and our website. And there's some certain timelines that you'll have to do. So whoever is or becomes a chair and vice chair will work closely with Letty and staff to identify what the agenda meetings will be. And then those items will be what the COC will discuss during your meeting. Generally speaking, items that are not on the agenda will not be a subject of discussion. The public participation as part of the Brown Act requires that we have an open a meeting that the public is entitled to participate in that meeting, both initially in items that are not in the agenda, but they're also allowed to participate on items that are in the agenda, and specifically if they want to comment on items that are on the agenda prior to the COC making a decision or committing to a certain action. So with respect to voting, so deliberations, voting, and all the other items that your COC will be performing will be open to the public. Any discussions and deliberations should be transparent and open. You can't have secret ballots on certain determinations of what actions the COC is going to take. Conducting serial meetings are also prohibited. And by that, I mean, you have individual A discussing with individual B, and then individual B discussing it with individual C, and individual C discussing it with individual D. That's called a daisy chain serial meeting, in which, you know, everybody is having a communication, but it's being done by each other individual. The other serial meeting that is not authorized is also, it's called a hub and spoke, where you have either a member of the public or a member of staff, or even a member of the COC, who then speaks individually to each other member and discusses an item that is before the COC. So in any event, avoiding those types of communications are essential for the board to be compliant with the Brown Act rules. The other thing that is very important to understand is that you now can and do communicate via email. So abstain from replying to all. If there's an individual board member that sends committee member, that sends an email to somebody or sends it to all of you, the proper action would be to reply, but not reply to all, just the individual that is sending that communication. That way there, you're not having essentially a serial meeting via email. The role of staff, we're here to help. We're here to ensure that your meetings go without a hitch. And so anything that you need from staff, myself, Letty, or the GM over here, we're here to assist the board, at least to get you started. And so you can communicate directly with us. What we'll probably end up having is maybe having questions and inquiries siphoned through the chair and vice chair. That way there, it allows for, you know, sort of a strong communication without having, you know, multiple members, you know, reaching out at the same time, and it'll assist staff in being able to track those inquiries. A little brief, so a lot of things have changed since COVID. We've had a lot of changes with regards to Zoom meetings and remote attendance. There's two pathways in which we can have a remote meeting. One is currently the traditional teleconferencing meetings, which require a whole slew of things, including sort of access by the public at the remote location and so forth. And we also have now under AB 2449 a different pathway, but these two pathways require certain initial actions by the committee. And as you can tell, we had you take an action at the very beginning of this meeting to allow for a remote hearing. So I will speak a lot more towards that when there's an issue that arises. However, generally speaking, for the current AB 22249, there's two reasons why you can have or you can attend remote meetings. One is just cause, and the other one is emergency. Just cause requires that you notify the COC ahead of time and request authorization to appear remotely. And so, and that's what we did today, is to authorize remote appearances. However, there are certain limitations with that, with respect to how often that can be done and so forth. And there's also certain requirements with regards to what is needed to actually perform a remote hearing. Part of it has to do with not allowing any disruptions. It requires a certain number of video and voice access by both the remote attendant and also the public. Generally speaking, if there is a question that needs to be answered with regards to attendance, remote, and so forth, I'm available for those inquiries. There's also will be posted in your website very detailed information regarding the Brown Act and what that might entail. I will be happy to answer any questions you have as they arise. And again, I'm available. My email and so forth has been posted also to this website. Any questions? I know this was very quick. There's a lot to cover here, but like I said, this presentation is also available online. Yes.
I'm reading between the lines a little bit, but you're suggesting that it really would be best for us to meet in person for these meetings.
Well, it's not that it's best or not. You have limited number of times in which you can meet remotely as an individual member. So for instance, the Brown Act requires currently that you meet in person. If you have an individual who cannot attend the meeting and wants to meet remotely, there's certain limitations on what that individual can and cannot do, and how many and how often that can be that can happen remotely. Having said that, the majority of a quorum needs to be meeting in person when you're utilizing the remote process for that individual other member.
Thank you.
No further questions? Okay, thank you. Can we bring the presentation back up? So the next agenda item number 5 is staggered terms. I will bring up again and read the COC bylaws. It says members shall be appointed for a term of 3 years. To provide for a staggered terms, at the first meeting of the committee, the members will draw lots to determine whether their initial appointment is for 1, 2, or 3 years. All initial appointment terms shall commence on January 1st, 2023, and subject to earlier removal or termination, shall expire May 31st, 2024, as to a 1-year term. May 31, 2025 as to 2-year terms, and May 31, 2026 as to 3-year terms. Thereafter, terms shall commence on June 1st and shall terminate on the 3rd anniversary date of such commencement date. So really need some feedback from the COC on this one, because we can do this one of 2 ways. We can simply all draw out of a hat and pick our number, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 years. Or if there are volunteers that are interested in just a 1-year term or a 2-year term, we could do it that way as well. But the board wanted there to be staggered terms so that there was some level of continuity on the COC. So any feedback on that?
I was under the impression that you could reapply.
Yes.
So if there wasn't any other, what preference would that put one?
Yeah, so if one were to select 1 year, let's just use 1 year as an example, when your 1-year term is up, you'd have to reapply and the board would have to reappoint you. Yeah, So it doesn't mean that you would be out. It just means that you would have to go through the process again. So like I said, open to any feedback that the members may have on this one.
I think we should do that.
Do just pick numbers? Okay.
It seems like the bylaws don't give us much flexibility to make any changes, right? So.
No,
they're-
there's
they're-
the bylaws don't give us,
So-
it doesn't specify how we do it. So
Okay.
if it sounds to me, looks to me like the best thing to do is just select numbers and let the chips fall where they may. So Letty, do you want to do the honors? Oh, a hat, oh, cup.
I have a question. Are we following Robert's rules of order and Bagley rules of order when we do this?
I can answer that. So the way the board hasn't determined what system of order the COC is going to follow. So the COC will have to make that determination once it determines, their chair and vice chair, whether or not that Robert's Rules of Order are something that will be followed. But at this point, the COC has not made a determination of what sort of process they will follow for meetings.
Okay, because I know all about Robert's Rules of Order, and I can be helpful with that if you guys need me to.
Thank you. So Letty, do we just go through each one and of what number they've selected?
Yes, Miss Erickson, I will go ahead and pull a number for you. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great, thank you. So I'll start with Miss Erickson. She ended up with number, and they're really sticky, number 1, thank you. So, and then I'll just go down with, down my list. Ms. Dilworth ended up with number
1,
1. And Ms. Adams,
3,
3. Mr. Engel,
1.
1. Miss Erickson ended up with 1. Kushaw, 2. McCubbin, 3. Nachor, 3. Sheehan,
2.
2. Great. And then that would leave McKay, who's not present, with the last number, which is number 2. Thank you. So given that the staggered terms have been established, can I get a motion to approve those years?
I'll make a
I'll make a
motion.
motion.
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. And I'll go down the list. Ms. Adams,
in favor.
Dilworth, it's left, absent. Engdahl,
Yes.
Erickson,
Aye.
Kushaw, McCubbin, McKay, it's absent. Nachor
Aye.
and Sheehan.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes.
Thank you, Letty. We bring the presentation back up.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened to the previous board, community committee that was here before? Did they all leave at the same time? Or how did that work?
Yes, ma'am. The board wrote new bylaws and requested that everybody reapply. That went through that process, and this group was selected based on the applications.
Okay, but I mean, the one that was here before, that they all ended at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there was a different set of rules then.
Yes, so there wasn't specific bylaws when that group
Okay.
was created. And therefore, they had all been on since the beginning.
Okay,
So they had been on since 2008.
okay,
So the board, when they went through this process, decided to set term limits.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it in our authority to thank the previous COC?
Absolutely.
Do we need a motion to do that, or can we just suggest
think-
that that be sent out as a letter of appreciation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, yeah, but we could, yeah, on behalf of this group, we could author something up, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, agenda item number 6. This would be the election of the chair and vice chair. Again, this is information directly from the bylaws. This is a chairperson and a vice chairperson shall be nominated and appointed by the committee. The appointment will be a majority vote. In the event of a vacancy in the chairperson's position, the vice chairperson shall succeed as chairperson for the balance of the chairperson's term, and the committee shall elect a successor to fill the vacancy in the vice chairperson's position. And so as we've gone through this process, we felt that the best way to do this is to make this like at the top of the agenda for our next meeting. Wanted you all to have an opportunity to get to know one another, to talk to each other, hear what your backgrounds, things like that. And but that'll be one of the first items we will take at the next meeting as we move forward. Yes, ma'am.
So how are we supposed to determine that when, to get to know each other, like that's a public thing?
Right, I mean, it was just,
I can
This-
answer that.
yeah,
So you are entitled to speak to each other. What you're not entitled to do is to reach a consensus or try to reach a consensus and so forth. So, pleasantries, personal, contact with each other is okay. What is not okay is if you start to try to build a consensus or make a determination ahead of time and so forth. So, if you're having communications that don't entail sort of, this is what one committee member said, and this is what the other committee member said, you're okay. It's once you start making those calls and saying, I want to be part of this, or I want to be part of that, or I know that certain person wants to do that. Now you're starting to have a serial meeting.
Could we start the process by who's in?
Well, you certainly can have it now as a discussion, but the determinations, well, so here's the Brown Act issue here, which is that's not set up for this meeting today. And therefore, it would be improper to have that discussion. You can voice your interest and so forth, but that determination as to who will be elected as a chair and vice chair is going to be set up for the next agenda meeting.
So is there the ability to have indications of interest prior to the next meeting so we can take time to look into people's backgrounds and make judgments? A 10-minute judgment on a decision like that doesn't seem like the right thing to do to set this up for success.
I think that would be fine. It's just indicating, I'm interested or not interested. But like I said, any determination or action would have to be agendized for the next meeting.
so I think it's okay to ask the question of those members that are here and realizing that one is absent and actually 2 are absent right now, I believe, Letty.
Yeah.
Is that correct? 2 are absent. Obviously, they could be interested as well. And we wouldn't have that information, but I think it's okay to pose that question as who is interested in chair and vice chair of the Citizens Oversight Committee. I'll ask the question, who's interested?
I make a great vice chair.
Okay,
Can you share more about the responsibilities of the position? Is it solely that sole paragraph you already walked us through, or is there a larger set of responsibilities, duties, expectations that have been specified?
no, not too much. I mean, it's really about, he will communicate with me and setting up the agenda of what items we need to talk about. So with the previous chair of the COC, he and I would talk, make sure that the items were on the agenda. He would hear from people of maybe other things that they wanted to hear about or wanted to be updated on. And we'd work together to create that agenda, and then it's showing up here and running the meeting. Anybody interested in
Sorry.
being chair?
One more question. You mentioned something like terms or term limits on the chair. Was that, did I hear that correctly? Or there are no specified terms for the position?
Go ahead, Tom.
I believe the term limits were 2 years, but I may be wrong on that. I haven't checked the bylaws lately.
I would do it because I have some experience, but my term is only for 1 year on this committee, so I'm not sure how that would work.
The vice chair and chair positions are independent of the terms. And therefore, if somebody couldn't complete the chair and vice chair position, because their term is shorter than that, they could always reapply and be part of that. Otherwise, we would choose a new vice chair or chair depending on the circumstances.
I'm interested in being the chair if no one else is.
Okay, so this is a discussion we can have at the next meeting. Like I said, I don't want to rule out those who are not here, thinking that they may not be interested in being chair. And again, if any of you, change your mind in between now and the next meeting, obviously, we'll have that. We had our board elections at our last board meeting for the Smart Board of Directors. Essentially, they took nominations for chair first. They voted on it, they selected, and then they moved to the vice chair position. So that process seemed to work well. I think it would work well for this group as we look at our next meeting. Speaking of the next meeting, upcoming meetings, go to the next slide. So regular meetings, again, this is directly from the COC bylaws. Regular meetings of the committee shall be held at least quarterly or more often as needed to discharge the COC's primary duties related to the strategic plan. I think that we should have two conversations here. One, about when do we set up the next meeting to make sure that this group is able to weigh in on the budget. I think that's going to be critical. And then when we would like to meet in the future. I will tell you the previous COC met at 7:30 in the morning, and I did receive numerous emails on a regular basis that was too early, and some did not like those meetings being at that time. But that's up to this group and something we can talk about. If it's something that you feel like ought to be discussed in the future, we could set up the next meeting and then start to have that discussion then. Or if we wanted to set it, if the committee wanted to set it up, say, okay, it's going to be quarterly on the second Wednesday or of the quarter, then we could do something like that. So I'd kick it back to the committee for discussion.
What is it that you guys need?
Say that again.
As far as input goes, and what is it from our group that you would actually need?
In regard to the budget?
Or anything else that this group is?
Yeah, so, the one thing that, some of the criticism of the previous COC was that they felt like some in the public felt that the only thing they did was the strategic plan, which was updated just every so often. The board expanded those duties a little bit to look at kind of what's going on in the agency, being able to have this voice of the citizens in the community to provide feedback. This committee will have obviously the responsibility of the strategic plan. It will have a heavy budget focus of things that, anything that would come back. But what I envision here is us providing like quarterly updates on what's going on with the budget, where we're at, things of that nature. We'll be providing ideas of what's going on with changing of our plans potentially changing of our goals, things like that. But basic updates of what's going on with SMART in general. And so really this group is to provide kind of that citizens feedback, not only to us, but also updating the board. That's one responsibility of the chair. I should have pointed this out when you asked that question. One responsibility of the chair will be to provide updates to the board of directors at least annually. I believe it's annually, is it not, Tom, or is it semi-annually?
I do believe it's annually, but
Okay.
I'll double check on
Um,
that.
Do we have any responsibility that's actually in writing to our own communities? I mean, do we go back to our city councils? What do we have? Is that a role that we take?
So it could, it's not specifically outlined in the bylaws, but what it does say, let me get back to it real quick.
And Eddie, while you're looking for that, essentially, my understanding of the bylaws were that the COC is to report directly to our SMART board and provide the input to our SMART board, and not represent SMART or the board in other committees or other jurisdictions. So the attempt here is to have the COC report directly to our board and provide the input and feedback to our board.
So if you get a request from your city council, which I already had, we just refer them to the board.
I don't know what the request says.
Well, just that I would keep them updated.
Well, that's fine, but not as a representative of the COC committee reporting to the other jurisdiction.
Okay.
So I have an important question to make here, because as far as I understand, the board meetings happen once a month on the is it second or third Wednesday of the month? Okay, so third. So from my understanding, if your meetings take place on the third Wednesday of the month, should it be imperative that the citizens oversight committee happen before the board meetings? Because that's the usual setup for the other CAC that I am involved in with Trans-Bay Joint Powers. If the citizens organizing committee over here with SMART has a meeting before the board meeting, that would be a wonderful way for us to get in and provide input to the to the GM and to the rest of the SMART staff before the board of directors meeting, which happens on the third Wednesday of each month. Would it be a good idea to have it like once a month to have a balance between ours and the board of directors?
Well, I think that's up to the group. It says at least quarterly, yeah.
This is Heather. I'm thinking one thing I could offer up, which I should have thought of before this meeting, is to give you a list of key dates. I have a calendar that goes out the next couple of years for all of the activities, like the strategic plan, like the budget, like the short range transit plan, those type of updates that I know about, right? Sometimes they happen at like the recent one we had to do for MTC, but perhaps we can provide that for you at the next meeting. And then based on that, you can decide when it makes sense to meet. Just like we were talking, it makes sense for you to meet sometime between when the board sees the draft budget and when the final budget is done, because you want time to comment and make changes, right?
Correct.
And we also have to keep in mind mailing dates for the board. We have to get stuff out well in advance. So we want to make sure that we have time to fix it if there's changes that need to be made after this conversation and before we mail it. So it might make sense to at least present you with key dates over the next couple, let's say 24 months. And then based on that, they can kind of figure out when it might be the best time to have those meetings. And it may or may not be exactly quarterly, right? Depending on what's being presented and what's due.
Right, but the more important question here is we want to be accountable to the board of directors as much as possible. Since you have your board meetings every month, it would be an incentive for us in, like with the citizens organizing to committee to have the, have a similar amount of meetings per year so that we can directly give you guidance on how to proceed with smart procedures, especially when things are changing with ridership, with all sorts of things. Like we definitely need more bike lanes, for example. We need bike share. We need more micro transit service. So if you meet already once a month, then it'll be better for us to meet around the same time, but maybe a week or so before the board meeting so that we can provide additional input before your board passes any new agenda or any new solutions to make SMART even better.
If I may, that's kind of not our role, as I understand it. We're the oversight committee. We're not the suggestion committee. Also, I just want to make this comment, having been to the previous COC meetings that were at 7:30 in the morning. One, I like this time slot. And two, if the COC commits to attending the board meetings, either by Zoom or in person, you get a lot more information than just having it be reported on, as they tended in the past to just sort of be an example of the board meeting. So if we commit to actually attending the board meeting, I don't feel like we need every month, but if we commit to attending the board meeting every month, and we look at the paradigm that Heather's talking about, I think we can create some structure that makes sense. But definitely committing to attending the board meeting or trying to be present for that. It just gives you a whole leap ahead as to what the board's thinking and what's coming up on future agendas.
I want to be very clear too, and I'll go back to the information I provided on the committee duties. It says receive briefings on financial, budgetary, capital plans, and other strategic planning matters. And so I don't think that there would be enough information to go over every single thing before every board meeting. But I think of keeping this group the focus on that strategic level and focusing on kind of those big major items would be more appropriate. Yes, sir.
A comment and a question. My personal opinion is that 12 meetings a year is too many and 4 meetings a year is too few. My suggestion would be to do every other month, 6 meetings a year, and to time them in advance of the board meetings so that this committee's input could be used at every other board meeting where appropriate. On Citizens Oversight Committee, can you clarify? Is it providing oversight to the staff of SMART? Is it providing oversight to the board of SMART? And just delineating and distinguishing between the role of the board of directors, which always operates in an oversight capacity, and the role of this committee, which is also operating in an oversight capacity. What I don't want to do is, have them doing all these items and we're thinking we're the only game in town and we're trying to do all the same items, and then we're just setting the staff on wild goose chases and wasting your time. So just talk more about the difference in role between the COC and the board as the staff sees it.
Yeah.
I can speak a little bit to that. So essentially, you're an advisory committee to the board. Okay, so that's what it is, but you're an advisory committee to the board on strategic planning matters. So the bulk of your work will come, every time there is a strategic plan to be drafted, you'll work closely with staff to put that plan together. You will put your input in that, and then that will go to the board for them to determine whether or not that's an appropriate strategic plan and adopt that plan. So you are an advisory committee to the board.
Thank you.
I've got a comment. I just wanted to add, the board's responsibilities are quite a bit broader than ours. So the idea that we need to meet as often as them, I don't see anything to support that idea. I think we could be meeting less often than them. I want to point out also, these meetings are expensive for SMART if we look at the staff time. And so we want to be very judicious in our meetings and very efficient and make sure we're focused on what our job is as the COC. So, the minimum of 4 meetings, I'm open to the idea of 6 meetings a year, but let's stay focused on what our job is. Heather's given us some pretty clear ideas. Let's aim for as soon as we can after that 17th, that May 17th. Let's focus on providing feedback on the budgetary process. Like Danny was saying, let's focus on making sure we're abreast of what the board is doing so that we can do our job. And we don't necessarily need more meetings to do our job better.
I was under the understanding, Heather, that you needed us before May 3rd in this particular. No,
I would think in that week of May 24th would probably be good, a week in between.
Yeah, so the board, we're gonna present the draft, but so we encourage you to come to the workshop remotely or in person, however you want, on the 3rd, right? Just so you get the background. Because it'll be a little less formal with the board and a lot more discussion. And we'll be laying out kind of our strategy and how they support this. Then we'll release the draft budget on the 17th to the board will formally release it to the public. We would like you to meet shortly thereafter, like the week of, we know that Monday's Memorial Day that week, but maybe the 31st or the 1st or something like
On
that.
vacation.
So not the 31st or the 1st. Apparently we didn't coordinate that well. When do you get back?
So I'm taking that week off. So
Okay,
or-
well, maybe not next Monday. Why don't we send something out, but sometime shortly thereafter, that way you've had a little bit of time to look at it. I can then answer very specific questions and you can offer any, thoughts or ideas or things that we should be prepared for to the board, because we'd like to incorporate that in time. Then I have to turn around and get the final document out to the board by the 21st, which means I have to have it done like about 10 days before that, 10, 15 days. And it's a large document. So
Eddie, are you on vacation the week of the 22nd?
No. Right. I am on the 29th.
yeah, we could meet that week before that.
I like consistency, so if
Yeah,
I know that it's
so-
one.
Yeah, so May 24th, that's a Wednesday. Yeah, then that's the Wednesday before Memorial Day. So
Yep.
Memorial Day is May 29th.
Mhm.
So maybe that date would work if you want us to start reviewing the budget that you have for us for your, for consideration towards the start of the fiscal year, which will be on July the 1st, 2023. So maybe May 24th would be a good start for, for budget discussion with the COC.
And then the idea would be that, if you wanted to give a report out on the July 21st meeting before the board, or June 21st meeting before the board, makes their decision on the budget, that would be the role of this group to
Of
have
the
it-
chair.
of the chair, yes.
Mhm.
So that would be kind of our first foray into getting this moving. And then, like I said, I have various other dates, big dates that are on the calendar over the next couple of years for these large documents that we could lay out to you and say, this is probably when it makes sense to have these discussions around these particular items.
Can
There
you
might
s-
be other things.
Do we need to have that at the next public meeting, or can we look at those dates out of public between us, just to look at dates? And then I would propose that we definitely set the 24th, 1:30 as maybe if it's not the next meeting, that's.
That date works fine for me, then the 24th of May.
I have received 2 requests from 2 different members. Ms. Dilworth has wanted to voice her opinion that Mondays or Tuesdays works best for her. Given the fact that on the 4th Wednesday, she has a meeting that she needs to attend in Marin. And then member McKay also has expressed that Mondays and Wednesday works best for him after hours. So those are the 2 suggestions that they have provided before they left or could not attend the meeting. So there's lots of different suggestions as Monday, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays for that week.
Tuesdays would be better for me.
Can you restate that? What was,
I said that Tuesdays would work better for me.
okay. Thank you.
Approximately how long are the meetings?
Well, it'll depend on the agenda. Typically they're around an hour or hour and a half, somewhere in that thing. Obviously, when we get into the strategic planning, there could be long drawn out, really robust discussions. And so, the agenda drives the time. But based on what we've seen in the past, the things that we would present, I would say probably in the neighborhood of an hour to hour and a half.
I have a question. Would we get reimbursed for our gas mileage if we were to attend these in person?
I could speak to that. This is Tom Lyons. No, the bylaws specifically exclude any sort of reimbursement and so forth for travel and for attendance.
So we would be doing this for free then? Here is your reminder.
That is correct.
For me personally, Wednesdays and Fridays are much easier for me to manage, especially being here in person. And I think this is a fabulous time. I think Wednesdays at 1:30 is great. That's my 2 cents.
I wouldn't be opposed to the Tuesday if it's, 2 out of 3, but I agree. I like this time slot, but that is the 4th Wednesday. And if that precludes a member from joining us, but this is one meeting also, we didn't say we have to do it, each meeting, the 4th Wednesday. But for this, maybe we could do the 4th Tuesday.
If I may, I think what might work is to set the next meeting and then staff can send out a proposed schedule. Obviously, everybody's going to have the likes and dislikes. And so whatever is being proposed is to be determined by the COC at the following meeting. But if we can set the next meeting on the agenda, then we can have a discussion there with the proposed schedule going forward.
So are we in agreement for Tuesday, the 20th?
I'm considering the 24th, the Wednesday.
I'm in favor.
I think you can take a motion and get a second.
My mic's not, because I'll just talk loudly. I'll make a motion that we meet the next meeting 1:30 Wednesday here at the Smart headquarters, May 24th.
Second,
at 1:30.
second.
I'll take roll call. Member Adams,
In favor?
member Dilworth is absent, member Engdahl,
Hey,
member Erickson,
Aye.
member Kusha, member McCubbin.
Aye.
A member McKay is absent, member Nature,
Aye.
and member Sheehan.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes.
We did something already.
2 things.
The motion passes. Thank you.
That concludes all of our presentations. Is there any other items that the committee would like to bring up or any other questions you may have?
So I would like to go back to the issue that you brought up with the ridership and the meetings that you conducted the last time around. There has been the persistent issue of bike share and scooter share, wherein I have been personally requesting it for a long time to have some sort of scooter share or ride share to and from the smart stations. I understand that it takes quite a while to not only to get the permits by city, but also get the coordination between the transit agencies like SMART, Golden Gate Marin Transit, Sonoma, and all to have bike, to have bike and scooter share in Marin and Sonoma counties. Do you happen to have a status on that particular aspect of the, project?
So I have some level of knowledge, so I want you to know and understand that SMART's not directly involved. We're a partner, but we're not running that project. That project is being managed by SCTA and TAM. But they were very close to executing a contract. Unfortunately, the bike share provider that they were working with went out of business.
Right.
Now they are back and they're going through the process again. It's still on the radar. They're still working on it, but that's what's been the holdup, is that the bike share provider went out of business.
Right, because from what I understand, like I actually have some knowledge of the previous scooter share company based in Florida that has, as you already said, gone out of business. It's also the same company that provided scooter share service in Richmond, which meant that if anything happened in Richmond, that would affect Marin and Sonoma County as well. As far as I understand, I believe Santa Rosa has a scooter share now with Bird, but I cannot confirm that, on the top of my head. But at the same time, I was just wondering if, how involved is Smart in this entire process? Because we have been waiting for it for many years.
Yeah, I
If,
understand.
Eddie, if I may
Yeah.
interrupt for a second, Mr. Notcher, as I was telling you about the Brown Act, the requirements on the Brown Act require that items like this that are for discussion should be agendized.
Okay.
Okay, so without going through the process of putting that item in the agenda, we would be, going beyond what the
Okay.
Brown Act would allow you to
That's-
do.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, we'll set it up for maybe the next meeting. I mean, it's just, the first time, I'm going through this really, it's like, but
No, I understand.
sorry about that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was gonna make,
Oh, there you go.
Second.
Yeah, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. And now that the meeting's over.